A mother shielded her child's ears as harsh words were thrown at Barron Trump in public. Eyes turned toward him, waiting for a reaction. What came next wasn't what anyone expected. It was a powerful moment that changed everything. The sun shone brightly over the streets of New York City, its golden rays bouncing off the glass storefronts. Inside a cozy bookstore tucked away on a quiet street, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the comforting scent of old pages. The bookstore was bustling with life, parents flipping through children's books, college students browsing classics, and older readers exploring new releases. Among them was Barron Trump, his tall frame making him stand out even in casual jeans and a hoodie. Despite his notoriety as the son of one of the most polarizing figures in the world, Barron preferred to keep a low profile. He was browsing the history section, running his fingers along the spines of books, when he suddenly heard a sharp voice behind him. "Well, look who it is," the voice sneered. "A Trump in a bookstore. What are you doing here, looking for tips on how to ruin the country?" Barron turned, startled. Standing a few feet away was a middle-aged woman with a fiery glare. Her voice carried over the quiet murmur of the bookstore, silencing conversations around her. Customers began to glance in their direction, their curiosity piqued. The woman took a step closer, crossing her arms. "I didn't think people like you read books," she added with a smirk. Barron's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He glanced around, noticing the growing attention from the other patrons. His natural instinct was to walk away and avoid conflict, but the woman's tone and the tension in the air made it impossible to ignore. The woman's voice sliced through the tranquil hum of the bookstore like a sharp knife. "You know, your family's name is a joke to half this country. It must be embarrassing to walk around knowing everyone despises you," she declared, her words laced with venom. Barron stiffened, but remained composed. He took a slow, deep breath, his gaze lingering on the spines of the books in front of him. For a moment, he tried to focus on the titles, hoping to drown out her voice and de-escalate the situation by staying silent. But the woman wasn't about to let him off so easily. "What's the matter?" she pressed, taking a step closer. Her voice rose slightly, enough to draw the attention of more customers. "No witty comebacks? Or is staying silent the only thing you've been taught?" Barron turned his head slightly, stealing a glance at her, his expression neutral. He didn't want to make a scene. He'd grown used to moments like these, people who projected their anger and assumptions onto him simply because of his last name. But the intensity of the woman's hostility caught him off guard. Nearby, a young mother with a little girl finally spoke up. Her voice was soft but firm. "Why don't you leave him alone? He's just a kid, and he hasn't said a word to you." The woman shot her a dismissive glare. "People like him need to hear the truth," she snapped, waving her hand as if to dismiss the comment. "They can't just walk around like they're untouchable." The tension in the air thickened as more customers began to stop and watch the interaction. Some whispered to each other, while others looked visibly uncomfortable. Barron finally turned to face the woman, his expression calm yet resolute. His height towered over her, but his tone remained soft. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steady, "I don't think shouting at someone in a bookstore is going to solve anything. Maybe we can all just move on with our day." For a brief moment, the woman seemed taken aback by his calm demeanor, but she quickly recovered. "Move on? That's easy for someone like you to say. You've never faced a day of struggle in your life," she spat, her words cutting through the silence. Just as the tension seemed unbearable, an elderly man who had been quietly observing the entire interaction stepped forward. He carried himself with a quiet authority, his weathered face lined with years of wisdom. "That's enough," he said firmly, his voice commanding without being loud. The woman turned to him, startled by the interruption. "This young man hasn't said a single unkind word to you," the man continued, his tone even and authoritative. "Yet here you are, making a scene and trying to humiliate him. Maybe it's time to stop embarrassing yourself and let him be." The room seemed to exhale collectively, as a murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. A few customers nodded, their expressions mirroring the older man's disapproval. The woman's confidence visibly faltered. She muttered something under her breath, her face flushed with embarrassment, and finally stepped back. She moved to another section of the store, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Barron, relieved but still uneasy, turned to the elderly man. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice tinged with genuine gratitude. The man smiled warmly and patted Barron on the shoulder. "Kindness always wins, son. Remember that," he said before walking away. As the crowd dispersed, the air in the bookstore lightened, but the encounter lingered in everyone's minds. Barron, though grateful for the support, couldn't shake the weight of the woman's words. He glanced at the books in his hand, a quiet determination settling over him. The confrontation could have ended there, but Barron felt compelled to take the situation a step further. He couldn't let the negativity linger, not just for himself, but for the woman as well. It wasn't in his nature to leave things unresolved. He approached the checkout counter, his footsteps measured and purposeful. The cashier, a young man in his 20s, gave him a small, encouraging smile. Recognizing Barron, he said nothing, but quickly rang up his purchase, a book titled The Power of Kindness. Barron turned and walked back toward the woman, who was now standing alone near the fiction section, flipping through a book absent-mindedly. The onlookers, sensing something was about to happen, subtly moved closer. Their curiosity piqued. As he approached, Barron held out the book, his expression calm and sincere. "I think this might help," he said softly. The woman looked up, startled. Her eyes flicked between the book and Barron's face, her expression a mixture of disbelief and confusion. "What's this supposed to mean?" she asked defensively, her tone sharper than she intended. "It's not about proving anyone right or wrong," Barron replied, his voice steady and warm. "It's about finding ways to understand each other better. I hope this helps." For a moment, the woman stood frozen, her fingers hesitating before taking the book. The weight of the moment seemed to hang in the air as the other customers watched, their silence almost reverent. Barron gave her a small nod and turned to leave, not waiting for a response. As he walked toward the exit, a young boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, and then broke away to follow Barron. The boy, no older than 7, stopped in front of him, clutching his mother's hand tightly. "I saw what you did," the boy said, his voice small but filled with admiration. "That was really brave." Barron knelt down, meeting the boy's gaze. "Sometimes it's not about being brave," he said gently. "It's about choosing to be kind. even when it's hard." The boy's wide eyes lit up with understanding, and he nodded earnestly. "I'll try to remember that," he said, his voice full of sincerity. As Barron stood and walked out of the bookstore, the murmurs of the crowd grew louder. This time, they weren't filled with judgment or discomfort, but with admiration and respect. The atmosphere in the bookstore had shifted entirely, and the story of what had just happened was one that no one present would soon forget. The video of Barron Trump's calm and graceful response quickly made its way to social media, shared by a bystander who had quietly recorded the scene. Captioned, "Barron Trump handles public confrontation with kindness. An unexpected lesson in grace," the video gained traction almost immediately. Within hours, it went viral, sparking an outpouring of admiration and praise. Comments flooded in from people inspired by Barron's maturity. "This is the role model we need right now," one person wrote. Another commented, "Grace under pressure. Barron Trump just showed the world how it's done." Hashtags like "Kindness Matters" and "Barron Inspires" trended as users shared stories of how they had been inspired to choose kindness in their own lives. The story caught the attention of news outlets, who praised Barron's ability to rise above the negativity directed at him. Even more surprising, the woman from the bookstore sent Barron a handwritten letter days later. She apologized for her behavior, admitting, "Your kindness humbled me. Thank you for showing me a better way." Barron's simple act of kindness had not only diffused a tense moment, but also sparked a ripple effect, encouraging others to reflect on their own actions and embrace compassion. The story didn't end there. Inspired by the viral moment, schools and community groups began organizing discussions and events around kindness and respect. A number sign kindness challenge emerged online, encouraging people to perform small acts of kindness and share their experiences. At home, Barron reflected on the incident. In a rare social media post, he shared his thoughts. "Kindness isn't a weakness. It's a strength we all have the power to use. Let's choose it more often." The post received an outpouring of support, with thousands thanking him for his words. One commenter wrote, "In a world full of division, this was the reminder we all needed.